Hello again, and welcome to Winning with the Wrangler at Dick Powell's Leadership Corner, brought to you by Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training and Development, where our passion is building leaders of today and tomorrow. Leaders, today we're going to take a little look and spend some time with what it means to be a leader. Now, I know that if you've been listening to this broadcast for a while, you know that my information comes from many different places and many different people. So if you hear yourself in our conversation today, please remember, it is not all about you. Now, these are some lessons that seem to have been, well, they just seem to be timeless. And leaders, the first one is this, really. Trustworthy leaders must have pure motives. Now, being trustworthy really happens over time. It's when people really start to understand who you are, what you stand for, the values and morals that you have, and how you live them out. And that trust that they put in you makes you a trustworthy person. Now, being trustworthy means being intentional about everything that we do and say and the way we act. Now, this whole piece here must have pure motives. Well, we all have our own agendas. There's no doubt about that. But if we are in charge of a corporation, a company, nonprofit, church, it's not all about us. And when you're a leader, it's never all about you. That's the whole thing. What are your motives? Are they there to help others help themselves? Are you there to help other leaders learn to be better leaders? Are you passing on those traits and values that you believe in? You see, that's pure motives are things that we need to be intentional about. Now, I've worked for many different people, and I bet you have too, and their motives for being a leader were strictly personal. It was all about them and moving themselves farther up the ladder, making more money or doing those kind of things. And they never really thought about the people around them. Now, I want you to put some thought back to that and think to yourself, did I trust them? Were they trustworthy? And were their motives purely pure for the entire organization, for the entire group, for every person within it? Or did they strictly spend most time on themselves? You see, these questions you need to ask yourself as a leader. What are my motives? What motivates me? And as a leader, that's something that is always going to be with you. And as I truly believe we're all leaders, I need to really encourage you to put some thought into that every single day. What am I doing? How am I doing it? What am I saying? Am I living? Am I walking the talk? Am I a person of pure motives? That's a good question to ask yourself. Now, the second one here, really, I have to tell you, I kind of put a lot more time into it because it says this. It says commitment separates the doers from the dreamers. Now, please don't misunderstand what I'm going to say. Dreamers are something we must have. And dreams are good. Please don't ever take and misunderstand what I'm saying, because without them, we would probably have nothing to move forward with. But the difference really becomes the doers of the dreams. If you're not putting some action behind your dream, it is strictly a dream. And that's not a terrible thing. It's just there has no action, so that means there's no consequences. There's no moving ahead. There's just nothing with it. Now, I've worked with a lot of people in my time who were great dreamers, but they just didn't know how to turn the dream into reality because they procrastinated long time and they didn't put any action behind it. Now, one young man, I have to tell you, he had a great idea and very innovative, but he kept trying to improve it, improve it, improve it, improve it. And what happened was, by the time he improved it till it was absolutely perfect, someone had already taken it to market. And unfortunately, the commitment really wasn't there. Now, leaders, commitment to your organization, to the people within the organization, all the way up and down the ladder. You have to be committed. Now, I'm going to tell you what, if you're not committed to them, they're not going to be committed to you. That's just a fact of life. So as we look at this commitment, are you committed? Well, what does that mean? Do you have any goals or metrics that you're committed to move the company ahead, to move individuals ahead? What are you trying to do, and how are you putting it in place? You see, it could be a commitment that you have a commitment just to show up every day. And quite frankly, I've had to let some people out of my life who just their only commitment was to show up, not really to be involved and not to be taking action. You see, I keep coming back to that because action really is the attraction, but it really is what makes things move. You see, without action, we just are stagnant. Think about that one for a minute. Let's keep going on to this next one because it really starts to hit home here. Vision is essential. You cannot seize what you cannot see. We here at Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training Development encourage everybody, individuals as well as corporations and organizations and churches, by the way, to have a vision. Now, a vision is a future picture. Now, it's really in depth because that picture needs to encompass everything that you see your organization happening. Now, we also encourage everyone to have their own personal vision because your personal vision incorporates your significant other, your whole family, as well as the organization or the company or the church. You see, those two things need to move together at all times. Anyone that tells you you can split out your personal life between your corporate life, well, they're just not being truthful with you. Everything does move together, and that's a good thing. So when you have a vision as a leader, you need to do some things with it. First of all, I hope that you've come to this vision for your organization, company, church by really talking and using the group that you're working with, your other people on your leadership team. Come together and really start looking down the line of what the future picture looks like and be strategic about it. Now, the second big thing that I believe that leaders sometimes overlook is that once they get the vision, they need to communicate it in a way that's enthusiastic and exciting so as the people who are going to be actually putting it into place get excited and enthusiastic about it also. Now, you can't just do it once. I'm going to encourage leaders to take that vision and constantly lay it out in front of the people. Constantly talk about it. Constantly take and put it in print. Constantly reiterating what our vision is. And you notice I use the word our, because as leaders of an organization or a company or a family, it's not all about you. Now, that vision, it needs to be everywhere. Every time you open a meeting, it needs to be reiterated. If you're I'm going to say it, if you're a pastor, you know what? You need to put it out there every Sunday morning. You see, people are interesting that they need to be reminded of what the vision is. They need to have that buy-in. In order to do that, they have to have some say within it. They have to have some personal piece inside it. And that becomes a very important piece. Vision. Now, with a vision, you need to have your mission, your purpose. Again, this is not just going to be a one-time thing that we're going to say, or we're going to take and put it up on the wall someplace or on top of our letterhead. This is going to need to be reiterated, talked about, formed all the time. And the last piece of it, of course, is your strategy, your plan. You see, everything in the plan needs to be looked at through the mission and the vision. Because the strategy is what is going to allow us, that day-to-day plan is what's going to allow us to live out our mission to achieve our vision. But leaders, if you don't keep that in the forefront of people's minds, bodies, actions, then they seem to let it slip away. Because we're human. And we have many things on our plates, and we need to have that always out in front of us. One of the biggest things that we found that worked here is we have it on our screens, on our computers. If you were in my office today, you would see that I'm sitting in front of 3 screens and the television camera and everything else. But it's here. And the reason it's here is because I need to be reminded of what my vision is. I need to be reminded of what our company's vision is. And that is an important piece. Now, leaders must be faithful over time and flexible of their schedules. This thing about time. Leaders, I know that in my youth, my younger days, people went to time management schools, the time management classes. I couldn't believe how many time management things that I went to. And quite frankly, most of the time management things that I went to wasted my time. And here's the reason why. First of all, when you're the leader, your time is very precious. On the other side of that, though, everybody that you work with, their time is precious. And so trying to come up with that perfect plan of when to spend time at home, when to spend time with my company, when to spend time with my employees, when to, all those times to take and do that, you need to remember this marvelous thing called MARF, M-A-R-F. Maintain absolute rigid flexibility. Now, the reason I bring that up is that I'm a list person. I have my day runner right here beside me, and it's clocked down into hourly compliments, and I have it all filled in. The thing is, though, great leaders, even though they have that, build in some flexibility. You never know when someone's going to come through that office door and really need you. Now, we've trained or we've instructed our folks that work with us that they don't come through the door with some kind of terrible problem unless they have some kind of wonderful idea how to solution. Has been a long time coming. But I'll tell you what, I still need to always make sure that I'm open and ready to listen. You see, this thing about time, really kind of understand that, yes, time is money, but it's more than that. Personal relationships always trump money. You see, the relationship between each other within your organization and company needs to be strong, as well as your relationships outside of your corporation or company. This is a big piece of leadership, quite frankly, and leadership is really built on strong relationships. Without them, leadership tends to go by the wayside. So when you look at this, think about this. Really, really think about how you are doing with this essential piece. Okay? So faithful of your time and be faithful of their time. Know where you're going and how you're going to get there. Now, this next one, leadership and responsibility must be shared according to the giftedness. One of the things that I learned, and sometimes people will tell you that I learned the hard way, was I learned how to delegate, or what I like to say, give away responsibilities. There are just some things that people are more gifted at than I am. And as a leader, my biggest accomplishment, I believe sometimes, is recognizing other people's gifts and passing along those opportunities that go along with those. No leader can be great at everything, but every great leader has people around them that are great at everything. You see, that's really the mark of a great leader, is knowing and have built the relationships with people to know what their gifts and talents are and where they can be involved inside the organization. Everybody likes to be involved, whether they like to, raise their hand and jump up at you, or they're the ones who sit quiet in the back who you really need to say, hey, could you do this one thing for me? Could you do this one thing for the organization? You really have a gift in this location, and I think you'd be really great at it. You see, as a leader, that's really what we're doing. We're called to build more leaders. And you can't build more leaders unless you let people give it a shot. So that's why when you read this thing, leadership and responsibility must be shared. Now, people that know me very well know that I talk about personal accountability and personal leadership. Now, personal accountability means that we're accountable for the things and actions, words, and everything that we do. And that accountability stretches far and sometimes gets stretched thin. But leadership is all about accountability and responsibility. So when you have built those relationships and you know what people's gifts and talents are who are working with you and around you on your team, make sure you're sharing them with them. Leaders must understand their resources before they can plan their journey. Wow. I want you to think about that. Leaders must know their resources. One of the things that I learned quite quickly in large organizations when I was asked to come in and help them out if they were in trouble was to always start at where everyone was working on the floor. Many times it's been in a manufacturing location, and I always go out there and put on my steel toe boots and my, baseball cap, and I go to work with them. Now the reason for that is that starting out on the floor, you can really get a sense of how the leadership has been towards those people, because as you're working side by side and elbow to elbow, you get some thought process that comes out there. And believe me, after a couple of days, they're willing to talk to you because they see you as one of the worker bees. Now, this thing of leaders must understand their resources. I have found over and over that leaders sometimes need to get out of the office and onto the floor. There are people out there doing some jobs who could really help you build your company or organization. If you just talk to them and build a relationship and find out what their knowledge base is, or what their hopes and dreams are that they want to be and accomplish in their life. How can you help them do that? You see, I believe that's a piece of leadership that we sometimes overlook. When I was the acting director of a company, people would come in, and I was an instructor and I loved being an instructor, but I always asked the people as they came in, what else do you really want to do? Because being an instructor is a great job, but what's next? And I would sit and listen to them, and one man wanted to be a lawyer and one wanted to be an accountant. And they had bigger dreams than what they were doing at the time. Helping them find that way into those locations was a big part of my leadership ability. And I believe that's what we as leaders need to do. But I would have never known that had I not taken the time to build those relationships. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Every once in a while, take your tie off or whatever and put on some blue jeans and go out and work on the floor if it's a manufacturing area. If it's some other agency where you can be out with the people doing the work, get out there and just spend some time. It's more than just buying them coffee and donuts. It's really going out and doing the job right next to them. Learning exactly what they're doing. Listen to their dreams and their hopes and their desires. You see, it'll build your company. It'll build your organization. It will build your church with a strong foundation. Leaders who listen to their people and help them reach their desires, their dreams, their hopes, are leaders who know how to build an organization, but they know how to build relationships. And that, my friends, is what we're truly called to do. Now, this one I'm going to read to you next. Leaders, please listen. This is one that I believe most of us stumble on from time to time, including myself. Leaders must be secure enough to handle conflict, criticism, and confrontation. As a leader, confrontation is something that most of us kind of shy away from. We believe if have someone who comes up and confronts us with something, then we need to fight back. The difference would be is to take and build a relationship with our people, so when there is a confrontation, they do it in a manner that isn't as confrontational. In other words, they come to you with a problem and they're not yelling and screaming. They're still confronting you with the situation. But encourage them, if they're going to confront with a situation, to have a solution. That's going to be hard, because at this time you might be busy, you could be overloaded, and they come to you with something that you feel is trivial. But understand that this confrontation is not trivial to them. And giving them the time and space is going to be important. One of the things I had to learn was sometimes just be quiet and listen. That people sometimes just needed to vent. And at the end of the vent, they had a solution, but they had to get to that point first. And as leaders, we had to learn to just be quiet and listen. Criticism, on the other hand, is hard to take from time to time, especially when it comes on somebody gets right up in your face and starts telling you all the things that you didn't do right and you could have done better. And that fight or flight response comes up from out of your gut. And as leaders, we need to stand there and learn from the criticism. Many times criticism comes in snarky little remarks, and those snarky little remarks make people laugh. The unfortunate part is most of the times snarky remarks have some truth in them. So you need to listen a little more than respond. As we learn from how people speak to us, we might need to listen and see how we speak to them. But criticism can be a powerful, positive tool if you allow it to be. And as leaders, this is something that we need to do better at. Instead of striking back, here's what I want you to do. I want you to listen, maybe even take a couple notes, ask them if they couldn't maybe even write it down. And then when they're all done, here's what I want you to do. Say thank you for having the courage to come and bring that to me. I'm going to do my best to learn from this and see how we can change things. I'm going to tell you what it'll take and really change how that next time it happens. Criticism can be a powerful learning tool. Now, conflict, ladies and gentlemen, conflict is just a natural part of life. Anytime you get more than two people in one room, I'm going to guarantee you someone's going to disagree. And I'm going to tell you what, that's okay. In an organization, in a company, in a church, in your family. If everybody just okayed everything that came across the desk, man, would that be boring. Not only that, no new ideas would ever come up. It would send a message that you don't trust anybody, so I'm not going to get involved anyhow. Conflict is a good thing. Conflict is what makes things grow. Conflict is what makes things go. Conflict is how people really learn and build together. It's how we handle conflict. It's whether we have the fight or flight response, or we have the, come on and sit down, let me hear you out. You see, as leaders, this is over again, learning to listen before we speak. Learning to gather all the information on a conflict before we try to just have a solution. Now, many times, I'm going to be honest with you, that people have come to my world over my years, and the solution is almost immediate in my head. Here's the ticket. When we do that, because we're prepared and we're ready, we send a message that they're not important because well, I've already thought of that, and here's the solution, go away. And that's not the message you want to send. You want to send the message when there is a conflict or criticism or confrontation. The message that you want to pass through is that I hear you. How can we solve this? Let's sit and discuss it. What are your solutions that you're bringing to the table to fix it? That's what they want to hear, and that's what you need to put on the table. These lessons from today are not easy, but I will guarantee you that if you put them into place, you will see a change in your leadership value. And the people who are with you will all of a sudden say to themselves, this is someone I want to be like. Boy, if I can learn those techniques, I too can be a great leader. Now, I see our time is coming to a close as usual. And on behalf of myself, Dick Powell, and the whole Leadership Corner team, I want to say thank you for being a part of today's program. My hope is that you have grabbed a hold of a nugget of wisdom and guidance that will help you become a better leader. Now, if you have any questions or comments on today's program, don't hesitate. Give us a call, 727-422-1833. Send me an email, dick@ewfw.org. Go to the website, spend some time. There's a little box there to click. Send me a note, www.ewfw.org. And when you are ready to have me come and put on a leadership seminar at your location, give us a phone call. Get on our schedule. We schedule up very quickly for the year, so you need to get on it quick. Now, Until next time, this is DW the Wrangler saying, ride hard, ride fast.